So let's see if it's working. Yeah, here we go. All right, they're starting to come online now. I'm going to give it about 20, 30 seconds. Then I'm going to play this intro.
Okay.
And I'm going to go to my page and I'm going to tag you. So you'll have it. Yeah, so you'll have it.
Great.
Let's see here. All right. It's been a pretty interesting. How long have you been in Tucson? How long have you been hanging out there?
Really only just like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I'm going to be heading to LA next.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, man. 20 million people, man. That's
I know, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, I was there last year. I was actually there when the outbreak happened, when they declared the state of emergency in LA. Yeah, because I was just at the Conscious Life Expo.
Yeah. Who's the guy that puts that on? What's the name of that guy?
Oh, I don't know.
A friend of do you know Scott Ware?
Mm-mm.
Scott Ware, yeah, he had asked me if I wanted to go and put a booth together or something, but that's right when all that hit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he does Radiance magazine, distributed mostly on the West Coast in Sedona. I do a little bit for him here, not much to speak of. Mm-hmm. But yeah, LA's I lived there twice. It's a interesting place.
Yeah.
To say the least. I lived in Chicago too. I much prefer Chicago.
Okay. Yeah, I like Chicago quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally into Chicago. That's like my third favorite city in the country. All right, we're going to play the intro real quick. We're going to be back with a new friend, Xane Daniel. We're going to get to know him in typical Soulogy style, spontaneously, intuitively, creatively, imaginatively, and depending on what we're talking about or doing courageously, I am soul. All right, we'll be right back. We're back with Xane Daniel. I know a lot of you know him because I've gotten some messages and I've seen some of the comments. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming in and sharing space with us and honoring us with your presence. I just found out he's from Chicago, which is one of my favorite cities. And he's now living the, what do you want to call this?
The van life.
The van life, yeah. So he's now living the van life and and his headquarters is the four-wheeled house that he's getting around in, which is pretty cool. You're in Tucson now.
Right.
That's very cool. We're going to be in Sedona for the first annual Soulogy Fest after 10 years and about 4 years of trying to manifest it.
Oh my gosh.
It's going to be May 28th, 29th, and 30th. And we should have, and I think actually 31st, we should have the website public. It's already done, but I mean, we'll release it and publish it. It looks like this weekend. So you can get more details then. There'll be more being added to it. We're going to have some pretty cool people there and try to do something a little bit different, not to take anything away from the pre-existing conferences and different gatherings, but we're going to try to mix it up a little bit with some music, some artistic expressions, light language, speakers, obviously, and some collaborations of a spontaneous nature. So everybody wants to know, I've seen you, you came on the radar 2, 3, 4 months ago.
Oh, okay.
I know you're doing some interviews. You're going to interview some folks that have been on here. I noticed a couple of shows, and it looks like you're really kind of fulfilling some inner guidance or mission, as a lot of people are starting to do. So my question is, when did you wake up, or have you always been this weird?
Oh no, I was very straight and normal. I was I call it, I was raised by scientists. So my grandfather was a chemist who worked on the H bomb for the US government after World War II. And I was raised in an environment with engineers all over the place. So it was not, spirituality and religion and all that wasn't even discussed. And if it was discussed like, I can't believe most of the world thinks this is true, like no way, it can't be real. So it was, and then I pursued a career in my passion, which at the time was video games. And so I was a video game producer for 22 years.
Wow, that's cool.
Thanks. Yeah. And then it was around 2013 that I had an ayahuasca experience that was my awakening moment. So as soon as it kicked in, I realized that I was speaking to a voice of universal knowledge. And at that point, I had never even heard of channeling. Like, I didn't even know what it was, but I knew that I was speaking to this voice of universal knowledge. And I had a moment where I just went, okay, all that science stuff that I subscribed to, I just like threw it over my shoulder and said, okay, what do you got for me? And I was like a child in wonder of what this new world could possibly be.
Wow. How did you end up in an ayahuasca ceremony? Was it here in the States? Was it here in the States?
Yeah.
So it was an illegal
Yeah. Oh yeah. And okay, this is a fun story, because the person who administered it didn't even know that it was called ayahuasca. It was complete amateur town. So, he had this stuff and he said, hey, we should do this. And he called it oral DMT because, of course, dimethyltryptamine is the main ingredient in ayahuasca. And he had smoked it a lot. And so he decided that we should all drink it.
There's a big difference.
Yes, there is. Yes. And he got the dosage wrong. He got it completely wrong. And everybody thinks when I say that of course he overdosed us, but that's not the case. He underdosed us. Yeah. And so I was the only one of all the people that experienced anything at all.
Wow.
And it only lasted about 20, 30 minutes, where normally it would be a 4-hour experience.
Yeah. You said it was kind of amateurish, but no, amateurish is when you wake up 3-4 years into your wake up and you have a friend in Amsterdam and he actually sent me the 2 ingredients, the 2 leaves. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
But everything he sent me was in, the metric system. So I thought I had it figured out. And, and I brewed up a batch. Number 1, amateur move, did it on my own.
Yeah.
Number 2 was, it was very concentrated. So okay. I did two within about 3 days. And the first one I was very careful, but the second one I thought, I did okay. So I took, I have very little. Only thing I remember is seeing my Merkaba, which was very interesting. Yeah, that was really cool. And a few other things, but I think most of mine was more of in a dream state. I don't have a lot of recall of it at all. Right. I just remember hearing her say to me, "You don't need to do this again." I said, "Okay."
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So, and so what possessed you to divest yourself of the material aspects of life, jump into an RV and start traveling around and pursuing what you're pursuing?
Right. Well, really, it's because I was living that matrix life. Even though the video game industry was fun, it was still the matrix life because it was a corporate one. I was working with Microsoft and huge corporations and all of that. And so I felt the pressure of those experiences. And I went, I really want to do something different now. I really want to explore and realize that some of these material things that I'd been pursuing up till that point were completely unnecessary. So how could I do that? I was like, all right, well, I could drive around and stay at hotels and things, but that just didn't seem as fun and as cool. I really liked the idea of having all of my stuff in one place. And I thought, I don't need stuff. And that was something that I was already actually kind of coming to the conclusion of before that awakening. And then it really became clear that, the stuff is completely unnecessary. It's the stuff in here and in here that's what matters. So I want to focus on those things instead, unburden myself,
Right on. I think a lot of us did that, some of us voluntarily and some of us involuntarily.
Yeah.
So Now, in terms of, like you mentioned, you didn't know what channeling was. There's of course a lot of words we can use. Channeling, download, communion, communication, infinite intelligence, whatever. But so did you, like, are you a practitioner? Do you channel by conventional standards? I mean, are you more like the producer, like I am, like, pulling people together, and just bringing the energy together and seeing what happens?
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm a little bit of both, really, but my main source of my work is really working with others, and that is through a healing modality. I work with the Hathors, the extra dimensional collective. That's who's behind me right here, Hathor, the Egyptian goddess. And so, I'm working with people, helping them overcome negative entity attachments, helping them overcome childhood traumas and those sorts of things. And so that's my main thrust of what I'm doing. But I also run the Higher Self Expo. So I am bringing people in and bringing them together and putting on this online only expo, which is really cool because I was so focused on really helping others and doing all of that, which I really liked, but I wasn't really reaching out and getting to know the other light workers. And so it was really because of that I said, why don't I create something like this? That way I'll get to know more people. And already we've done 3 events in 1 year. We've got another one coming up in July, and it's really starting to blossom and explode into its own thing. So it's been a great ride.
I've seen some of those things, and I think I've actually participated in 2 or 3 or 4 of them. The ones I'm familiar with, or what I've been exposed to, is you have like an ongoing kind of presentation format, speaker, another speaker, for either a day or a weekend, that type of thing. Is that how yours is set up?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And so, when we first started off, we just did 7 or 8 people in 1 day just to kind of test it out. And then this one in July, we're doing 24 straight hours of speakers in 30. So that's about 33 speakers across the world. So we've got hosts in Australia and hosts in Europe and hosts in the US. And so we'll do 8 hours in each kind of time zone region and really put together something.
So each host will have a lineup of 7 or 8 speakers, and then you move it on to the next one. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And where do you do this out of? Is it a multi-stream? You do it out of a YouTube channel? You do it out of a website? Where do you do it?
It's a multi-stream. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. And you've been doing this for how long? You said you did 3 this year, right?
Yeah, 3 this year. Really just started the Higher Self Expo because of COVID. Because, my plan was, like we were talking about, driving around in the van and speaking at conferences, which I was doing, like the Conscious Life Expo right before COVID hit. And then I went, this is going to be, a problem. So how else could we do this? And I thought, well, I should probably just go ahead and create my own so that I can meet those people and still continue to speak. So
you spoke at conferences, and are you speaking in regard to your energy session type work, like with the Hathors?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm giving group sessions too. So it's really all about how can I help the audience, even in that one particular situation. So I'm doing a big group healing called the Soul Essence Activation, where I'm bringing the best versions of their past incarnation forward into their current one, especially as it relates to their life's purpose. And I do that using the energy centers of the body, like the chakras or the meridians. And it's usually a very exciting and fun experience for everybody. And, I just absolutely love it, of course.
Right on. I got to ask you too. My bride just sent me a note, but I was actually going to ask you this because I've always been curious about it. How do you handle the Wi-Fi being on the road? Or do you have to make sure you're in a specific spot or a decent spot to be able to get signal?
Yeah, it's a challenge because, when you use a laptop, you need to have a hotspot on your phone, and that they usually charge you, not that they charge you as much as that there's a limit to the data amount. So that is a challenge. So actually right now I'm parked in front of a Starbucks and I'm their Wi-Fi at the moment. And
so it's really the same thing, right? I mean, it's like, even when I was on the streets, when I first woke up for a couple of years, I had to work off McDonald's and Starbucks and Lowe's or Home Depot, anywhere where they had an open, And, I always find it interesting to talk to practitioners in regard to their own experience, right? Like, I know you help people And I've talked to a lot of people, 2,600 shows, I think now, that many of them are practitioners. What do you do when you get triggered?
When I get triggered?
Yeah. What's your process for yourself?
Okay. Yeah. I like that question. Well, and it actually just recently happened not that long ago. And I had an opportunity to have kind of a fear experience where I had, survival fear sort of feeling. And that really allowed me to just be aware of myself, just observe myself and say, oh, look at how Zane's responding to this. What
Right.
is this feeling? Oh, there's a palpitation or a pounding in my chest. There's a nervousness feeling in my arms and my shoulders. And okay, so what is this about? And then I start smiling because I realize what's happening and that this is our physiological response to issues. And I actually used it as a learning opportunity, because I work with people who have this all the time, like constantly have this sort of experience. And I haven't had one like that in a long time. It had been pretty much since I was a child. So I actually really relished the opportunity to have it so that I could even more relate to the people that I'm working with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like too, your perspective is no different with yourself as it was as is with other people. Like
Yeah,
you're almost talking like Xane is a separate from the observer that's doing the laughing.
right. Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
And so,
Yeah,
how did the Hathor thing come into play? I mean, I've had a little bit of exposure to it on a personal level. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. I've heard a
right.
few. I know they came in for me on a really eventful Lionsgate in 2016. A couple of them came in. So it wasn't necessary. It wasn't in my case. It wasn't one entity. It was two representing. I don't know. Anyway, they came in, told me who they were, and then I had another one time when I was. I guess I was working by myself. A lot of times, most of the time, I'm with my wife. We work things together nightly. And I remember specifically, I think it was in the old studio, and I was in the pyramids, and then they came. Well, one came out, and it had to do with like it had to do with like the whole death, like the little deaths that we were going through. I don't remember what the energy was at the time, but there was a lot of ego death, and I remember that specifically. What type of information or intel do they offer to you? How does it serve you? What's your experience with them?
Yeah, it's pretty great because they're very integrated into me. And so I will have a thought and I won't know that it's from them versus me. I'll just have a thought and I'll go, I've never had that thought before. That's interesting. And then a lot of times it'll come through when I'm working with someone. All of a sudden I'm saying things that I've never said before. It's not a trance channel experience. It's just, they're just talking or through me essentially, or yeah, it's kind of a combination of me and them. And so I didn't even know who it was for the longest time, because I was speaking to this voice that I just called it the voice, because I was like, I don't know, it's like a thought in my head that's not coming from my brain. So what is this? And this was back when I didn't even know what channeling was. And I was just, using it when I was talking to people that I could trust. I thought, okay, I want to tell you this thing that I can talk to this voice in my head. And I would tell it to people that I thought, oh, they probably won't commit me. and so then I would say, why don't you ask the voice a question and let's see what kind of answer we get. And I was in that experimental phase, and they would be kind of amazed that I could, have this knowledge that I shouldn't know. And then later, as it became more commonplace and I got more practice with it, I really started to recognize that there were almost like different characters, different individuals that I was working with. But often when I would ask them, who is this? They would say, it doesn't matter. What matters is the information, or what matters is the healing, or whatever. So they didn't like to reveal their identity to me. And it's been a teaching lesson for me, for others, because we get so wrapped up in knowing who it is. And I think it's because we feel comfortable with that. We put things in boxes and we say, okay, well, I want to know who this is. Oh, this is the Hathors. Okay, good. Whew, you know, that feels good. I'm going to set that over here. Now I know that fact. And now my brain is free to work on the next thing. And really, that is, again, that's a fear-based kind of action. And so I try to encourage people to just be open to whatever it is, not worry about where it's coming from, not trying to solve all those problems, because that's just the three-dimensional left brain trying to fix everything, trying to solve everything. And
right.
We can just relax and have faith and trust in our own abilities, our own free will, and whoever it is that's working with us are extremely powerful, and then they have our highest good in mind.
Right on, right on. That's an interesting subject, you know, and I say this because of a conversation I had with Mary Rodwell the other day. She's come on a few times. She's always interesting, and I totally agree with you in terms of the, you know, and let's face it too. I mean, these downloads, everyone's getting them. They're getting them in different ways. Some people have been getting them for a while. Some people are just getting them.
Yep.
And they can be very powerful. They are very powerful. They're very challenging to the ego. I think years ago in these circles, you could see people that would identify themselves almost, you know, wholly with one essence or one galactic light being, or, you know, whatever it might be. And there's certainly, you know, the obvious that we've had to detach from programs and labels and so on, and then to see it flip and applied to these higher dimensional aspect communications and etc.
Yeah.
So that's been interesting. Now, Mary brought up something really interesting. You know, I tried to delve into, you know, like what kind of code can we offer in this collaboration for others to wake up to, you know, unbeknownst to ourselves, you know, but I mean, just through this conversation. And so I was asking her, I said, what did I tell her? I said, for those people that are just waking up now, what advice would you give to them in terms of having the confidence to engage the energy that's coming at them, and to kind of decipher, you know, what to listen to, what not to listen to? Do you have to go through those motions in the ether, so to speak? And she said something really interesting. She said, first of all, and she said it before on the shows, that she's very much a skeptic. And of course, coming from her, somebody with her pedigree and background and experience, you gotta listen. And
Sure.
So she said, so I ask a lot of questions, and I ask questions, and any question I want to ask, I ask. And if I get answers that are not, you know, making my body light up, then I know that, you know, my discernment tells me to move a different direction, wherever the case may be. But it is kind of a work in process too. I mean, we're literally building the way. I mean, I don't know about you, but you didn't get an owner's manual when you woke up, did you?
No, of course not. No. And, you know, and the other thing too is what, like she was saying, when they talk to you, do you feel a lower vibrational emotion? Do you feel fear, or do you feel frustration, or do you feel, you know, anger, or do you feel unworthiness? Any of those types of feelings. If you feel those feelings, then that is definitely not a higher vibrational being that you're speaking to. Because, you know, I was talking to one guy that I met at a conference, and he was lamenting the, you know, the conspiracy stuff that's going on. He's like, oh, one of my guides is telling me to take my money and put it over, you know, do all this crazy stuff. Right. And I was just like, okay, do all your guides say that? And he's like, oh no, they don't all say that. Okay, well, I think you should probably stop listening to that one. And he was kind of blown away even by the thought of it. And I was like, yeah, that other guide that you're calling a guide is making you worried, is making you afraid, is making you nervous. And that's a big sign that they don't have your best interest in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. It really is. I mean, I listen to a lot of stories, obviously, because I do, you know, 60, 70 shows a month, and I get to hear a lot of different things. And I certainly, I don't question anyone's reality. I mean, I've had things people probably think I'm nuts, you know, but it's an interesting mixed bag, because I can remember earlier in my awakening experience having the innate discernment, or the innate knowing of what was what. But I also remember in a very shamanic type of teaching where my guides, my team, would actually test me and almost, well, present something that might be like, I remember one time there was a, kind of a really intense episode occurring in the early days. And I remember I was in a van and my friend was driving and I was kind of like getting out of someplace, but I didn't understand energetics the way I do now. But I was like, my time was done there. It was very intense. There was a lot of what people might call negative energy, but I would refer to it differently now. But anyway, as we were driving this, it was almost like a movie where like it was going dun 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 dun, and this black bird flew right in front of me, and I knew it was like a signal. And as soon as I tapped into it, I saw my team, and their faces turned into something that wasn't what I was familiar with.
Okay.
And so for about half a day into that night, I stayed with it, and I knew there was something to it. I knew that I hadn't been duped all these months, because we all know that when you first start to do this, you question yourself a lot. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that type of experience, shamanesque, type experience where, they basically test you, right. Which isn't always fun and pleasant, but what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had that happen in dreams, and I've had that happen in ayahuasca. And my favorite one was probably in ayahuasca, where I'm talking, because when I do ayahuasca, I have a dialogue. It's not just imagery. It's not just thoughts. Right. There's actually a voice speaking English to me, and I get to go back and forth with them, and it's fantastic. I'm having this conversation with the spirit of ayahuasca. She's already labeled herself, called herself Aya, so we're having this straight up conversation and everything's going great. She's teaching me wonderful things about myself and the world. And then all of a sudden she got quiet, and I saw all my imagery that was just, beautiful colors and whatever just disappear. And now there were just demons, and the demons were coming closer and closer to me, and her voice is gone. And I said, oh man, we got to do demons. I was trying to like make light of it. No response. They're just coming closer and closer and closer. And I finally just went, you know what? If you think that I need demons in order to grow and learn the way that I'm supposed to at this point, then bring them on. And as soon as I said that, whoosh, they were wiped away, and her voice came back, and we continued on the way. So there are so many amazing fear tests, and when you pass those, my gosh, does it feel great, Because
isn't it like crazy? Yeah, and I totally get what you're saying. I don't want to go into my story, but I relate to what you're saying. That regardless of how it happens to any of us, there is this presentation of what we might call dark and light, or this perception that gets challenged. Like, it's almost like, if it's Mother Ayahuasca talking to you or whoever, they're going, okay, oneness is oneness, man. So here's the scariest thing you've ever seen, and here's the most beautiful angel you've ever seen. Your job is to bring them to the middle and see yourself as both of them and see them as the same thing. And that's, of course, a very, very short, concise, general statement, but you know what I mean? And so my question is, like, so you just started for you in 2013 with that ayahuasca. As you've, gone down this path, and you're become, in other words, your fear has lessened or diminished or dissipated, whatever, in terms of anything that might have been, perceived as scary or whatever. As this has all evolved, how you look at the collective experience, the world stage, the narratives out there, like everything from galactic wars to the cabal to Q to Trump to, it's crazy to see all these different threads out there. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, very easily. I think we are all one. We are all the creator. And so everything that's going on, you say, who's more powerful, Donald Trump or the universe? Who's more powerful, the cabal or the universe? Who's more powerful, et cetera, or the universe? And the answer is so obvious. We've created it all as source, as a combined one being. We've said, hey, let's just try out all this stuff. Let's try bad things, quote unquote. Let's try good things, quote unquote. As source, we don't have judgment. So there is no bad and there is no good. It's all just experiences. So we can decide, because we are these three-dimensional beings, we can decide that something is bad from our limited three-dimensional perspective, where we're trying to avoid pain and we're trying to pursue pleasure. That little mindset, that little judgment brain can decide all kinds of stuff. And that's valid too. Go for it. Enjoy. But what you think is good might be what somebody else thinks is bad, and vice versa. So if you continue to subscribe to that limited perspective, then that's what you're going to experience. Is a very limited perspective, and go for it. You know, you're here to do that if that's what you want to do. But it's way more amazing to view the world from that we as source created it all of the good and all of the bad, and get to experience it from every possible angle. So everybody is doing that right now, and they're all on their own journey, and one day you'll get to be them.
Yeah. And we'll get to be them. They'll get to be us and we'll get to be them, because for everything we see in them, there's something we don't see in ourselves, right? And that's the other limitlessness factor. It's not just about how far can we take this and how omniscient can we actually embody, you know, within ourselves. And it's also about how you get there. And how you get there, I think, is what you're talking about, which is continuing to, without exception, there is no exception. It's an all or nothing proposition. You're either in or you're out. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's happening now, is like, because it's limitless, you know, you have, okay, I'm shedding the distorted masculine, and I'm shedding this program, and I'm shedding that program. And you just can't put your feet up on the desk and, you know, I made it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, in order to gain, there has to be an exchange. Yes. And I think we've done a great job. I mean, I think we've done a much better job than we know. And there's a lot of great things to come, but it's through these types of stories, like your own story, these actions of faith and sovereignty. You know what I mean? Like, like you take, it's like, what's the old saying? The best defense is a good offense. So we're not on our heels anymore. We're like chugging forward, and there's a lot of congealment and a lot of collaboration and co-creative energy and enterprises occurring now, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did it. One of the Higher Self Expos was all about how we're moving from a 3D society into a 5D society, and the different people that are working on actually doing those things. And that's a really fun and fascinating thing to see. A lot of times in this space, we want to hear about what the galactics say, or you know, what our new spiritual gifts are. But actually out there in that 3D world that we're all kind of, that a lot of people are kind of like, oh, I want to be away from that. Like, get away from the 3D. I want to go to the 5D. That 3D is an amazing place. It is fantastic. And everything that's happening there is perfect, with flaws, and exactly as it is. So this is something that I say a lot. Let's say that I had a doorway, and I could open up a door, and you could walk through the door, and you could see through the door actually first, and you could see that there's a 5D society beyond that door. And I said to you, all you have to do is go through the door, and you move from a 3D society, which is based on fear, into a 5D society that is based on unconditional love. Would you go through the door? Would you go through the door? Okay. So you'd step through the door, and then you would go, oh man, I'm still in the 3D society. Xane, you liar. Like, what the heck? What's going on here? And the correct answer to that statement is, no, I don't need to go through that door. I love this 3D reality exactly as it is. And only then, when you can say that, you move into a 5D consciousness. Yeah. Because you're no longer trying to run from fear.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, look, you know, how does this, you know, at least for myself, I recognized 10 years ago when this all started for me that the universe is teaching me in a paradoxical way.
Yes.
Once I say something's up, it's down. Once I say it's left, it's right. Once it's right, it's wrong. So it's like this whole, and that's not even a good explanation because both are true. So when I hear what you're saying, I get this like, okay, well, first of all, we've been standing in the light we thought was darkness the whole time, right? I mean, there's that paradox, right? And then the other thing being that meme that goes around, and it's like, you will not be happy where you're going until you're happy where you are, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the conversion. We got to remember, we're transformers. So it's not about running to another place, and we've all been there. When I meet her, when I have this job, when I have this home, when I get an RV and I'm traveling around, which could be true, right? It could be true, but if I was having this conversation with my bride a couple of nights ago in regard to a subject, and I said, she was talking about something. I said, well, then you should do this. I mean, if that's the way, because that's the only way you're going to find out.
Right.
I mean, at some point, maybe not, but I mean, one thing you will find out is if you do take that jump and you go to that greener pasture, so to speak, you're going to find out if the program's still running, because you are going to have an alteration in alignment, or you're not. And then you're going to go, oh shit, what did I miss? Right.
Yeah.
And that's our journey, really, because nothing happens until you sold your house, buy a van, and put your plan in place. I mean, I left with a suitcase and 11 cents in October 13th, 2016. And you know what I mean? I mean, it's like you have to take an action, and not, when people say have to, need to, I cringe and I'm like running the other way. But like in order for something to come, the universe gives nothing for free. So you give something, you walk in faith, and I would even say blind faith, and then boom, something happens, and you're experiencing it. I know, without even asking you.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It's an amazing experience, and every approach is valid. That's the other beauty of it, that the person who's angry at the world and feeling miserable and like, maybe they're in a wheelchair because of some sort of accident that they had, or they were in a war or whatever, and they could like blame everybody else, and they could, yell at people who try to help them in through doors because they're like, no, I can do it myself. Right. Mm-hmm. Like they can, and we could look at them and go, gosh, boy, that poor guy, he sure is miserable. He could be using this as an opportunity, but he's decided to use this as a place to feel unworthy. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. That is a valid source experience. You as source decided in this particular incarnation that you're going to be miserable about all these things. So you could try it out, experience it. Great, go for it. Or you could look at it and say, hey, I'm in a wheelchair. I like to stop and let people open the door for me because they get a smile on their face because they just helped someone out. And so I could really enjoy that aspect of it. That's totally valid as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a necessary, invaluable, like I remember writing years ago when I was doing a lot of poetry, and it was, I'm not complete without the universe, but the universe is not complete without me. So that person you're describing, well, look at all the things that they injected or offered to the cosmic jigsaw puzzle. Whoever the observers gets to see it. Well, they're not seeing it necessarily for you know what I mean? It's not about them. It's about me. Why am I seeing it? Right. What is it showing me? What am I missing? You know what I mean? These are the questions. What is God? What is this? These are the questions that started us. And this is just an extrapolation of it that really drives this thing. Even like what you're doing or what I'm doing, you get to a certain point and you like, okay, let's just say you fast forward to the end of May. We had the first Soulogy Fest. I started popping off about this in 2017. Oh, we're going to do it next month. And we're going to do it. And you're just like, humble pie. But so you get to a point where you say you've worked to do something. You're creating a whole new playing field of more enhanced dynamics it's the same dynamics, and ultimately it's all, the same thing, the polarity and the integration into the 0 point and so on. But there's a whole new thing coming. You really got to keep yourself in check. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're 10 years into your wake up or one day. It's really kind of a self-managing thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You get to decide how you respond to everything. That is your ultimate free will, is how you respond to external stimuli. You might think, oh, well, I could probably change the world if I use manifestation, and if I use my spiritual gifts and all this stuff, I can just change the world so that it conforms to what I want. No, you can go ahead, try that. You can enjoy that experience, however that goes for you. But the one thing that you definitely know you can do is you can change the way that you respond to absolutely every situation.
Yeah, that's a big one, and the other interesting part of it too is the whole masculine journey, feminine journey. For the most part, it applies to gender, physicality, but not always. But there's this typical path of one versus the other, and then come into these revelations of self-management. It's like, for me, for instance, I'm a talker. I'm from Texas. I'm an extrovert. I'm gregarious, whatever. And starting to get all these other factors coming in of the true reality, I just start to shut my mouth. I start to do what these wise women have been doing, sitting back, observing everybody, taking in the information. You know what I mean? Like when you want to know what's going on in a social environment, who do you go ask? The one with the big mouth or the one that never says anything? You know what I mean? So all these different dynamics coming in, and it's cool because you're right. This is all our decision. It's your decision. It's my decision. So, and this stay in your own lane thing is, I think, becoming a big deal in 2021 too, because I think we're all starting to understand that it serves us best to do that.
Well, and it's interesting that you come from a place of being an extrovert, and I actually kind of come from a place of being an introvert. I was more the observer and the listener and all of that. And I've had to really train myself and being a speaker and being a host of a conference and all of that. And it's been a really fantastic experience, because it's just like anything. The more you do it, the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. And I think, all those 40 plus years of being an observer and not much of a talker has probably given me some wisdom that I'm using now when I do talk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally get that. I watch it with, my wife doesn't want to be on camera. She doesn't. She loves to write. She's got incredible sacred wisdom. Been downloaded for 20 plus years. Yet there's this dance, and and I don't mean so much literally, but it's energetic, and it comes out in the literal physical experience. And it's not just her. It's not just other people like me getting quieter, and it's not always the masculine and the feminine. I mean, you have the same makeup that she does, yet here you're walking in. It's almost like everything is going to the center, almost like an automatic pilot thing. Like my piece of the jigsaw puzzle needs to mute down a little bit to fit into that groove, right? Click, and then yours or hers maybe needs to expand a little bit. I mean, but going back to what we started with, or one of the things that you mentioned, whatever it is, your example of the guy that said, "Oh, I need to go do this because my higher self's telling me I need to go put my money in Bitcoin," or whatever the case is, right? It's such a different way of hearing that I heard somebody say one time. It's almost like you're making it up, and so the line's so thin. That when people, and they don't reach out to me much, I'm not much of a practitioner at all, but I obviously talk to people, and I always just say, which I got from her was, hey, if your body will tell you, your body will light up, it will tell you, especially at this stage of the game, because the energy at this point is irrefutable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you just kind of have to go with whatever feels right at the time, right? There is that inner knowing. Like I talk about this all the time, that in each of us is a child, right? There's a child that just wants to go out and play and enjoy exploring the world and touch the fuzzy thing and watch the ants on the sidewalk, right? You've still got that. That's a big part of you, but you've probably put it aside or pushed it aside. There's also another part of you that is a master. That's that voice of universal knowledge. Everybody has access to that. And so that voice knows the answers to every question. It unconditionally loves all. It is this powerful being that you actually have access to. And I kind of teach people how to access that. But then there's a third person that I like to call the adult. And that is the one that doesn't have patience for the child, that says that they can't afford this. It's the one that thinks that it's the master because it's using the rules of the 3D society to try to make all of its decisions. Oh, well, the stock market's going to go up, so I'm going to invest in that. Here's my 5-year plan. These are all the adult talking. And actually, the less time that we spend as the adult and the more time we spend as the child and the master, the more that we live in the moment and the more that we actually get true information that isn't ego-based or isn't survival-based or fear-based or any of the lower vibrational emotions.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. You know, there seems to be like certain templates that, you know, occur and reoccur throughout our experience at macro levels down to the micro levels. And if you look at the way the realm was constructed, at least based on, let's say, the convergence of many narratives, you have this whole fallen angel or, you know, DNA manipulation or however you want to put it. But somebody was left in charge of God, goddesses, creation, this beautiful planet we call Mother Earth, right? And they became, somewhere along the line, and maybe it was part, I'm sure it was part of, we all had a hand in it. You become like the lesser God. The lesser God is that parent, you know, lesser God is, yeah, because I know better. I'm serving love. I'm serving God. And I know better than you because I've lived longer or because I went to a university. I mean, we have all of this rationale that you see over and over again. How many, what is it? 1/3 of crimes are crimes of passion. I mean, think of all the stuff we did out of love, right? The jealousy, the envy, you know, the possession, the control, the manipulation. Yeah, but I love you. I love you, though. I love you. So this whole thing, this process, or the way that you look at it, I think kind of is like a you know, like a simple way to see what is the reality, rather than get caught up all the minutia and all the different representations of it. You know, it's really, you just can kind of break it down to me and the universe. That's about it.
Right. Yeah.
It's not, it's called the no bullshit zone.
Right. And then there's kind of almost no me. It's kind of just the universe, right?
Yeah.
That we could easily slip into and just observe it in that way. And you were saying that jealousy and manipulation and all those things come from love. I don't think they do. I actually think that love obviously is a very separate thing, right? Those negative things are all from low self-esteem and fear that you're not going to be accepted and all those things. And unconditional love, huge difference. And you know, I obviously, I love unconditional love as a conversation because people think that it's so hard to reach, but actually the definition, the word unconditional, means no matter what, right? Yeah. So you don't have to judge it. You can unconditionally love yourself because you're not saying, oh, well, I haven't done this yet, and I'm still flawed, and I have an annoying laugh, and people don't like it when I do this and do that. Wait. Unconditional love means I love myself anyway, right, despite all of those things. Oh my gosh, that's way easier. I don't have to try to get to this place that I've constructed in my mind through judgment and childhood upbringing and the society and all this crap. I can just love myself anyway.
Right on. So whatever you do for yourself, it's reflected outward, right? I mean, it's going to match you. You're going to reflect something that is then going to create something that's matched to that. And when I was actually being sarcastic
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because we did. Now it's not working anymore. It doesn't have the traction it used to have. It's not working. You know, and
I can't live without you, right? Like that's one of the,
well,
right?
it's a codependent. We're coming out of a codependent template, you know, and we're moving into. And I love what you said about unconditional because I'm a big believer. You know, you hear, and I'm not knocking anybody, but you hear channelers and different, you know, people that have that type of connection saying we're returning to the original blueprint. Well, I personally don't think we're returning to the original blueprint. I think we might be going back to the original blueprint to then expand it. So this whole thing about unconditional love is a work in process. It is spiritual inertia in motion. And I think what's happening now is you're having a lot of things align. And you're a great example. So you say, I'm going to sell my house. I'm going, boom. So all this stuff starts falling into place like Tetris, right? And as a result, because of the physical frequency part of it, you know, this stuff normally happens, in dimension, in the ethers, you know, but this has got this physical aspect, this hardcore, dense atmosphere, dense body that's actually the same material as our light body, you know, it's all God's substance, right? And so that energetic force is creating an expansion of everything, you know, including what is love, what is truth, you know, what is the goddess? I mean, what am I? What are you? You know, it's fascinating where we're at today.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's perfect exactly as it is. Every aspect of everything that's going on, that we're witnessing, that we're experiencing, every feeling, every emotion, every moment is perfect exactly as it is. And when you move into a place like that, then wow, you can be in gratitude all the time. I am so grateful that this amazing thing happened. I am so grateful that this terrible thing happened. I am so grateful for every possibility because I'm here to experience it. And then when this journey is over and I go back and I wake up one day from after death and go, oh my gosh, it was all me.
Right.
Everything was me. Every person I interacted with, every situation, every rock, every planet, it was all me. Oh, wow. Okay. I want to do it again.
You know, that's interesting because I don't know if you've heard of Franco Di Nicola, but he's been around a long time. He's been doing this since he was in the womb. Has recollection of the womb. He has recollection of incarnations on other planets. I mean, he's very connected to it. He's a very down to earth guy, right? And he'll be at Soulogy Fest, by the way. He's a good friend of mine. He's going to be there. But one of the things he says is, you know, he does a series called Advancing Consciousness. He does it on YouTube out of his, you know, it's multi-stream. And I think he's like on course 70 now. And one of the things he says is that he one day was talking about suicide. And he said, suicide is not what you think it is. He said, I can't really explain it. But again, here we go back to the free will like you were talking about. But he said, one thing I can tell you is those souls that I have, you know, been presented with through his word that have chosen to transition by what we call suicide. The first thing that they say when they're done is, oh my God, I want to go back. Right?
Yeah, right.
Like, you know, and then you hear like many channelers in social media over the years and even on this program say, hey, souls are lined up to come to earth.
Yeah.
This is such an opportunity, you know, to really push the envelope. Yeah.
And so we can squander that opportunity and go, gosh, everything's miserable and this is so hard and I was abused and I had all these things. And you can go into the victim mindset, which again is completely valid. If you want to go ahead and do that, go for it. But if you know all of these facts, like the fact that they're all lined up trying to get here, then you might pause for a second and go, well, how could I look at this in a positive way? Is there any possibility that this was actually a positive? And as soon as you start asking yourself that question, then that master, that voice of universal knowledge, will start going, yeah, because this, and yeah, because that, and it cleared the way for this, and look who you are now because of it. And then the next thing you know, you'll be able to really truly enjoy and love this experience.
Right on. Right on. That's a great point. And this is where I struggle, and I have this personal personal objective or goal or whatever, to marry what we call starseed platforms, like say like a Soulogy type, with disclosure platform, with conspiracy platform, and start to engage conversations. And I've done it, and it's been interesting.
I'm sure.
And sometimes, occasionally, it's been misconstrued that I'm anti-Q or anti-Trump, and I'm not. I don't have any political affiliations. I could care less. I'm not. I'm in a different field, right?
Right.
Not to diminish that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I'm not into fear-based programming. I'm not into savior-based programming. I'm into the I am soul. I'm into what we're here talking about. But this is where I struggle, because so many of these things that we say, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. So if we believe everybody's a soul that has chosen to come here, has had a hand, has had free will, because a lot of people think free will is just here on earth. Well, I have news. I honestly don't think God, goddess forced anybody to come here. We raised our hand and said, I'm fucking going, Yeah. And so, so we say these things. Well, every soul chose their path, and there are no victims. So, and then I hear and see all this rhetoric and confusion and mix of frequencies and projection and polarization in the light worker community. I'm like, what the hell? I just want to shake them and say, hey, wait a minute, because this is an all or nothing proposition. And I think where people might have got confused, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. There were many people talked about the great divide. The good people are over here, the bad people are over here, right? Right? The Q people are here and the non-Q people are here, or the Republicans and it's so any way you want, but there is no in between. I think the great divide is right here. It's through that self-analyzation, self-introspection, and what you were saying, asking those questions by what's presented to you. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Judgment. It requires judgment. If you have the good people over here, the bad people over there, or this type of person over here, that's judgment. And the only place that judgment occurs is here in the third dimension. There is no judgment outside of here. There can't be. It's impossible. So if you believe that there are good people and there are bad people, that's your own very limited perspective that's believing that. And as soon as you go down that path, then you are, fulfilling your destiny of being a very limited being, which is also, like I said, very valid, and the reason that you're here, maybe it's to transcend that and to recognize that actually everything is what we created, what we wanted. I mean, I feel like I'm a broken record, but it always comes back to that we can get wrapped up in judgment, and that's just a waste of our time.
Absolutely. Judgment is getting to the point now where it's just a distraction. You can. It's no different than trying. The sarcasm I had with talking about the things we do for love. Because I can do these things now. I'm talking about the old way, the codependent. Many were toxic relationship, that frequency. Well, I can do this because I love you. I do this because look. I go to work every day. I work 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, and you're, bitching about this or that. You know what I mean? There's always this way to substantiate or rationalize because I loved you. And so this is what you're rationalizing judgment. You're rationalizing misaligned behavioral patterns. And so I think we're making really good progress because we are talking about. Not just talking about it, but actually applying judgment or non-judgment.
Right.
So this is the part of our trip that can't be stopped. This is the big cosmic fire hydrant that somebody unscrewed and is shooting out there now. And it's these conscious lifestyles that are transforming individuals and therefore creating a new cosmic jigsaw puzzle, which is that higher truth, higher love, and all that. And it's an honor to be here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, the gratitude just flows, right? It drips off of us. I do have to say something. Steve Velarde just posted something in the chat here that I think is super interesting, because he says, judgment defeats us. Now, do we see the flaw with that statement? That is a judgment. So that statement, judgment defeats us, is a judgment. Oh, what's defeat mean? What does that even mean? Oh, that must mean that he's saying that there's something bad that's going to happen as a result of judgment. Oh, to determine that something is bad is judgment.
Yeah.
So it's so easy. Look how easy it is to go down that judgment path. Like, he really had a great point, and he was excited about that. And at first I was like, yeah, Steve, judgment defeats us. And then I went, wait a minute. No, judgment is part of this experience.
Yeah. Well, and some people, I mean, and that's another thing that gets me, is where I hear, oh, they're not awake. They don't get it. I'm like, oh, I only speak from experience, and you don't need to have all the scar tissue that I have.
Right.
Because whatever, there's always a yin and yang. And so there's always the other side of it that we can't see. And this thing to me has gotten to the point where I'm like, you know what? I don't know a damn thing. Right. I don't, because when I go to bed at night and I lay my head down and I commune, my wife and I, we commune, great things happen, all kinds of things, whatever. You wake up the next day and it's like an Etch-a-Sketch, like everything's gone, canvas is clear.
Right.
I remember being told 10 years ago when I hit the streets, and this all started for me, I was like, okay, what's happening? And they're like, ascension is a scale of 1 to 10. I said, great. They said, okay, you did great today. You got to a 9.5, right? Or something like that. And I'm sleep. I wake up the next morning and they're like, you did great yesterday. You did like a 9.75, but guess what? Today there's a new scale of 1 to 10, and the old 10 is a 1.
Right.
Here we go. Right. So it's just so many because of that, by virtue of that, this statement that he made, you go back 5 months, you go back 2 years, you go back 5 years. That is about as high. That's about as concise, a profound statement you could have. Right. Today, it's a different ballgame. Like, what got us here isn't necessarily going to get us to the next threshold.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's really fun to be kind of like a part of all this, to be able to ponder these things with people like you, right? And to wonder how we can make our lives better, and in turn, maybe we can make some other lives better. But see, look at that. I just used the word better. So that
it's like healing. It's like healing, right?
Yeah, right.
You can't say it anymore. You can't say, I'm going to heal you. Well, that's another thing. Like this year, specifically, I'm like going, okay, what are you saying? Be careful what you're saying. Be careful what you're letting in. Even my wife might say something that I see as limiting, and I'll just be like, sorry, honey, that's not in my field. So it's like, if I say, like, I'm working on personal upgrades to my physical body. See? So use the language, right? I'm working on transformational aspects of my body. You know what I mean? If I say I need to heal something, or something is sick or off, that is a reality.
Sure.
And this is where we've moved into now. We actually have the advantage of being in a quantum field where obviously our thoughts generate, but we also have the advantage of the verbalization. I remember 10 years ago, my team telling me the most important code that you will receive from the universe is what comes out of your mouth in regard to other people or yourself. And, like everything else, you don't get it, like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year, and then you start, oh, that's what you meant. Right.
Right. Yeah. The perspective of time is amazing. Yeah. When people and I love that too, when people are miserable in the moment, like, oh my gosh, everything's gone wrong. Everything's all screwed up. I just broke up with my spouse or my partner or whatever, and they're just absolutely miserable. But the thing is that in a year, in 6 months, in 2 years, they're going to look back at that and they're going to go, actually, you know what? That was for the best. I mean, sure felt crappy at the time. I had lower vibrational emotions and those hurt, but now it cleared out this and it cleared out that. And so why can't we start to use that and to know that and start to work on ourselves while we're experiencing that lower vibrational emotion? Like, oh, this is so painful and so difficult, but I know that eventually it will be better. And the more that you can say that, the more you can say, I know that I'll get there. I know that I'll get through this. I know that it will be an incredible life the rest of my life. That the more that you practice that, the easier and easier it becomes to handle and deal with lower vibrational, painful emotions, because that's what they are, right? We don't like fear. We don't like heartbreak. We don't like frustration, because they hurt. They have a physiological pain associated with them so that we survive. They're all about survival. So, okay, that is something undesirable. We can say that's bad from our perspective because we don't like the feeling of it. But at the same time, recognizing and realizing that it's all part of our survival programming, it's like, okay, well then I'm actually here to experience what it feels like to have those feelings. Because when I'm source, or when I'm my soul self, I can't die. I can't have fear. I can't have any of these lower vibrational emotions. They're inaccessible to me. So you have to come here in order to actually experience them, to take it seriously, to be like, oh my gosh, I could die. Or, oh my gosh, I'm jealous of this person or that situation. I couldn't experience that before. So now you get to. And it's so funny to tell people, oh, you get to have negative experiences. They're like, what? Shut up. I don't want that.
That's a great point, man. I want to point out this, Steve put up another one. Language is inherently loaded with judgment. And this is what I was getting at, being conscious of what I'm saying, because, they talk about the abracadabra and all that, like the words or spells and all that. I got to mention this one last time. I mentioned this on a couple of shows, but this is right to your point. And how the universal paradox is in full force, right? So I'm watching this 17-minute clip from Gaia TV the other night. I was just killing time. It's Matthias Stefano.
Oh, yeah.
And he was talking about the Galactic Confederation, how it was formed, and basically how the Earth was formed. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of fast forward. So we're in the sixth dimension. The third dimension is being developed, and this beautiful planet's created, and there's life on it, and there's this council that's kind of overseen at the Galactic Confederation. Why was it formed? It was formed so that they could assist in congruence with the goddess, the development and evolution of, and so on. So what ends up happening is there's a vote taken. Do you want to bring these mammals into the galactic, into this level or this dimension? I think it was like sixth dimension. Do you want to bring them into this? Do you want to help them to ascend? Is this something we want to do? And the majority of the votes was no. And the reason the majority of the votes was no was because of our power. And then he went on to, because our power was actually more than they had. They'd never seen it before. And then he went on to explain that the basis of the power was emotion. Like they couldn't relate to it. They're like, what the hell is that? I mean, some of them have obviously love and, like the Arcturians or whatever, but this was a full range of emotions.
Right.
So they're basically, he went on to say how some of the species or brothers, our family, whatever, would utilize our energy, which is our emotions, right? Which it was like, they talk about the archons use it as sustenance and, but to run entire planets, the energy grid on an entire planet from our emotional energy, right? Mm-hmm. So back to that and to tie it all together, I mean, this is when Franco ran across those souls that transitioned through what we call suicide, they said, I want to go back. What was the pull? The pull was the very things that we're trying to keep at arm's length, right? When actually, we're integrating all these polarities, dualities would be a better word. There's a great alchemic, reaction or development or experience when we actually make peace with these things. You know, when we actually don't, because you can't BS that. You know, when you actually sit with anger and you sit with emotion and raw emotion and prolonged sadness, and that's some deep examination. That's very, very, you know, it's a very big payoff, but it's also a very big challenge to get through it.
Oh yeah, because we're so programmed to avoid it. If fear felt good, then we would walk along the edge of the cliff all the time, and then whoop, oh, I fell off, I'm dead. Okay, well, but that's because it felt so good. Because it feels bad, you're like, oh my gosh, get me away from that. Like I don't have anything to do with that thing. And guess what? We survive. So it's so ingrained in us that to avoid the bad thing and to pursue the good thing, and that's, you know, that even works for people who don't even realize, or animals or whatever, that don't even realize their mortality. So if you didn't know that you could die, and you just walked to the edge of the cliff and went, yay, you know, and jumped off of it, and then you died, it'd be like, oh, well, that didn't work out so well. Right. So you need that response system to teach you that actually bad, you don't want to fall off that.
Or good. You know, how many times have any of us done anything?
Right.
Like you were in the corporate world, and I would bet you this applied. Somebody walks in the door, they're new, you know, you guys have all these different software programs and systems, and you're working on this, and you have a certain culture. Somebody walks in the door and says, I'm going to do this, you know, and does it because no one told them there was a ceiling.
Right.
And then they do it, and everyone's like, he's an effing genius, man. But
Right.
What happens? The gate gets opened, and everyone else starts, you know, expanding off, remixing what that person. I mean, so it's like, it's like that. And how many times have we done stuff? You know, I remember, years ago, my two oldest kids, the daughter's like at the time about 6, or no, she'd have been about 7. The boy's about 3. And there was a McDonald's thing, and it was one of those kids' playgrounds with a slide you get up on and you go down. And he's absolutely petrified. Like he is like, dude, I'm not going. And she's like a thrill seeker. Like, man, you're going, man. And so the end of the story is she got him to go up there. And when he came off of that thing, man, he was like, I mean, he was like a new person, right? Yeah. So we have that occur, which I think is, but I'm a big believer in you're not going to find out until you try.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever it may be.
Right. Yeah.
Because putting it off is only going to make it bigger when it comes back. Right. If you don't do it, it's going to come. It's going to come. Yeah. It's what a ride, man. So are you going to be, you're going to LA?
Yeah.
And no plans after that. You're operating on the 5D non-time.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm kind of following the weather. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm doing in LA is, I write and publish my own comic book series, also called Righteous. Cool. It's about a greedy corporate analyst who has a being of light touch him on the forehead, and it changes him so that he can only help others, and he can't just make money for himself anymore.
It's like that movie Liar, Liar with Jim.
It's like, it's like that. Cool. Yes. Yeah. But with the added thing of helping others, and then there's like a twist that every time that our main character helps someone, then they get it too, and so they spread it because they're just helping people. So it's my way of showing like a mass market, a wide awakening. Anyway, I've got some folks out there that I'm hoping to work with to turn it into like a TV show.
Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah,
like Robot Chicken, or what's that latest one? Have you seen that one? Something Gospel. I can't remember. Midnight Gospel. Is it Midnight Gospel?
Yeah, it might be. Yeah. Well, and this would be live action. This wouldn't be a cartoon.
Oh, this would be people.
Yeah, because it's not really superhero based or anything. It's not like people are flying around wearing tights. It's regular everyday people that are having these realizations like, oh my gosh, what have I been doing in my entire life? Let me try this. And
cool. That's cool. Very cool. Right on. So how can people find you? Where can they, you got anything coming up? I mean, anything you want to talk about before we head out of here? But most of all, make sure let us know where we can find you and in the different places.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got ZaneDaniel.com there at the bottom of the screen. And then the comic book is Righteous is the name of the comic book. And so it's righteouscomic.com, and you can go free.righteouscomic.com to get a free one.
Righteous what? Comic?
Righteous Comic, all one word.
.com. I got you. Yeah. Boom. It's on all the platforms right there.
Awesome. Yeah. And then I'm going to be hosting the Equinox event on Awoken TV, which is awoken.tv. So if you want to check that out, we've got about 7 hours of speakers and light workers and healers, including myself, that'll be doing that. Then the Higher Self Expo in July. And of course, I have a YouTube channel too that I would love for people to check out. That's just youtube.com/ZaneDaniel. And I post at least a video per week.
Right on. Zane Daniel YouTube.
Yeah, youtube.com/ZaneDaniel.
Right on. Well, they'll know. They look up your name on YouTube. All right. Well, man, it'd be good to hook up with you again in 2021. I wish you the best in all your endeavors. All blessings to you and yours. And thank you for coming in and honoring us with your presence and sharing space with us and cutting up with us. And very cool.
I love everybody who paid attention, everybody in the world, of course, but everybody who joined us today. I love you unconditionally. And you too, Todd. Thank you.
Thank you, man. And I just want to tell everybody we will be back in 45 minutes for the third of 4 shows today. And I forgot who it is. I can't even remember who's coming on. Anyway, it'll be good. See y'all.
Of course.
Take care. Oh, it's Franco. What am I talking about? Franco.
Oh my gosh. Nice.
Yeah.